Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone joining for this part of the two digital finance themed sessions today. I understand that some of you are still joining, and it's great to see some familiar names joining us who were also part of the previous session. For those just joining us now, it's fantastic to have you on board. I would like to hand over the floor to the moderator for this session, Catherine Atkin, who is the co-founder and principal of Blue Vista Solutions and the chair of Codex Climate Data Policy Initiative at the Stanford Center for Legal Informatics in the US. Catherine, thanks so much for moderating this panel today and ensuring that we maximize the amazing wealth of knowledge in the room today. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Poria. Yes, we're super, all of us, we all know each other, so I'm looking forward to a really engaging panel where we don't just surface issues, but we actually problem solve on them together. Welcome to this panel, which is part two, focused on getting money to where it's needed, digital finance and just transitions. I want to thank the leadership of ICLEI, including Poria Salehi, who's part of the conversation today, as you can see, who's the head of Urban Research, Innovation, and Development Team for ICLEI World Secretariat. You all have been providing the leadership, being the largest global network of cities around both mitigation, adaptation, the need to bring this all together to develop need-based climate solutions that are deployed in cities that both protect our future and also create more opportunity in cities for people to live thriving lives. So the opportunity and challenges are great. We know there's a tremendous need for the deployment of new solutions, but a gap in the ability to get those financed to create the business models that can unlock the impact we know that is potentially there and that we need to see in the future. So the focus of the discussion today is on digital finance solutions that can leverage the power of things like IoT, blockchain, big data, and can bridge that gap between subnational governments and climate finance to drive the deployment of those need-based climate solutions. That is going to be an exciting conversation. Those technologies that were called next gen and are now here with us to unlock the kind of impact we need. And also let's talk about those different business models, the carbon markets, the IoT, pay-go, fintech, digital MRV. All of these are going to be the focus of the conversation today. I'm really excited to have today this panel that includes Masamba Chioye, who's the project executive of the UNEP CCC's Global Innovation Hub, as well as these international climate leaders that I'm going to introduce that are also involved with the Hub's digital finance working group. So in addition to Masamba Chioye, who I just introduced, we have Catherine Foster, who's the executive director of the Green Digital Finance Alliance in Switzerland, Bobby Kia, the Climate Solutions Investment and Technology Deployment Strategy Head, SK Hart Management in the US, and then Poria, who I've already introduced. So we're really excited to come together today and workshop this conversation, build off the one that just happened, and project a plan for the future. So before I introduce our keynote speaker, Masamba, I do want to just share that there is going to be a Q&A here, so please use the chat as you're going along and want to form your questions, and we'll do our best to respond to them either in writing or verbally in this group. And there will also be a recording available for this because these are really important conversations, and we're excited to showcase them today and work in the future with you. So with that, I want to introduce Masamba again as our keynote. Really, all of us came together to work in service of the UGIH because the Global Innovation Hub is a transformative, leading global solution to the struggle and challenges we face in creating these kind of climate and sustainability future that we know we need and that people deserve. And so Masamba has been an amazing leader in bringing us all together and many others in the Global Innovation Hub. I'm just honored to be part of this group and working alongside these others in support of the UGIH. Love to have Masamba as a keynote, spend some time talking about the UGIH and how you think digital finance solutions fit into your theory of change around climate and sustainability, and what you think the objectives of the digital finance working group that's coming together to effectuate and drive the agenda of UGIH. So Masamba, please share with us your insights and thoughts for the future.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. I'm really very pleased to be part of this very interesting dialogue on the role of digital finance as an enabler for a green and digital future, particularly in cities, serving citizens. So my name is Masamba Choi. I'm the project executive of the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub, an initiative launched by the UNFCCC Secretariat at COP26 in Glasgow. And the main purpose of the Global Innovation Hub is to enhance the use of innovation to serve people and the planet. This is why cities are very important for us, because cities are very close to their citizens. So the specificity of the Global Innovation Hub is the way that we are approaching innovation when it comes to climate and sustainability. One of the things that we are doing is to promote a moonshot mindset when we set goal and target. Most of the time, what is happening is that climate and sustainability goals are set not based on what is needed, but based on what is perceived as possible. Of course, if we do so, we do not provide any room for innovation. So a moonshot mindset that promote the setting of goal and target based on what is needed is a starting point so that innovation can be fully leveraged to serve people and the planet. The second thing is the need to open up the space for innovation. Currently, it is very much restricted to innovation in the sector. And the problem is that not only this restrict the space for innovation, but we also miss the most transformative type of innovation. So one of the things that we are promoting is to go back to the core human needs and explore to what extent innovation can be used to facilitate the development where it is needed of alternative products and services that can satisfy the core human need and do it while being aligned with the climate and sustainability goal. The third element that is very important is the need to have an holistic and integrated approach to climate and sustainability innovation. So it's not about, let's say, technology innovation alone or innovative climate financial solution alone. We need to have an integrated approach where innovative technology are integrated with innovative policy instrument, innovative financial instrument, innovative business model, and innovative cooperative approach. And this is why for us, digital finance that is integrating innovative digital technology and financial instrument is something extremely important. And finally, we are promoting a demand-driven approach to innovation. So far, innovation has mainly been focusing on product push innovation. So you innovate and you try to find use cases for your innovation. So what we are saying is it should be the other way around. We need to identify what are the needs in terms of climate and sustainability innovation and develop an innovation roadmap based on the demand for climate and sustainability solution. And this is what will be the driver of climate and sustainability innovation. What we can see is that digital finance has an important role in facilitating this framework that will enable a twin green digital transition and a just transition, which is exactly what the Global Innovation Hub is promoting. Indeed, the upscale deployment of digital finance will enable transformative climate and sustainability action. So first, it will help disrupt the way financial services are currently accessed. We will no more need mobility to access these financial services. Citizens will be able to perform various financial transactions such as payment, fund transfer, account management, and so from the comfort of their home or on the go using smartphone and computer. This can drastically reduce the need for motorized transportation. We will also have limited need for building to host bank branches. So these are two important core human needs: access, including mobilities, and shelter that will be impacted by an upscale deployment of digital finance. Second, the financing of climate and sustainability requires tracking to determine the effectiveness of the financial intervention. We need to understand where the finance is coming from, what it has been used for, the use of proceeds, and what impact has been achieved. So for example, the Global Innovation Hub has been working this last year on integrated green bond and carbon finance. A green bond is defined under this framework as a normal bond at which you attach a forward contract, which is a commitment, a promise to deliver in the future carbon credit arising from the implementation of the project, financed with the use of proceeds of the green bond. This is a game changer because it translates the ex post reward that carbon finance is currently into an ex ante enabler that will facilitate the mobilization of finance to implement projects that are very much capital intensive. So it can also facilitate digital finance, the mobilization of finance for climate and sustainability. And if we mobilize the improvement and streamlining that it enables, it will have a very impactful consequence. And this includes enhanced accessibility and inclusion, with digital finance making financial services more accessible to a large segment of the population, including those who were previously underserved by traditional financial institutions. This is very important for the global south. For example, in my country, in Senegal, few people have access to a traditional financial institution. Limited people have bank account. So with digital finance, we see a very important group of the population, a large segment of the population, having now access to financial services. Cost efficiency that can translate into lower fees and better interest rate. And then we can also have, enabled by digital finance, new and alternative source of lending. So for example, the rise of alternative lending platform, such as peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding, can be upscale with the use of digital finance. So one technology will play a very important role. This is blockchain. The advent of this technology has transformed aspects of digital finance because of its two functionalities. The immutability function, which is extremely important, and also the consensus building function. It offers decentralized and borderless transaction and enhanced security and transparency in financial operation. So we can see that digital finance can play a significant role in facilitating a just green transition by providing the financial tools, resources, and infrastructure needed for a smooth and balanced shift toward more sustainable practices. This is why the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub is promoting enhanced use of digital finance for cities, climate and sustainability action, and is engaging with stakeholders operating in digital finance to explore how best it can support their contribution in transitioning cities toward a smart and wise future, a productive, regenerative, and empowering future. And most of our colleagues and friends that are in this panel are supporting the Global Innovation Hub in achieving this objective. And we are looking forward to enhancing our collaboration more specifically on this aspect of our collaboration that promote digital finance as a tool to facilitate the green transition that we are contemplating. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Chair, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Masamba. We so appreciate those words. And I just want to say, we are ready to implement that agenda, and we're excited to continue this conversation. That's why the Digital Finance Working Group that Bobby and I are chairing, as well as Pouria and Katie, both from ICLEI and GDFA, are coming in as institutional partners so that we can actually concretely connect cities with solution providers and financiers. And I think your point about 2 points I want to just say that really hit home for me. One is that digital finance is also about democratizing engagement of citizens, residents, NGOs, others that for so many years have been locked out of really determining their future and unlocking finance for the things they know they need. So I really take that for a just transition is going to require everyone to be at the table and for there to be winners along those value chains. So one, that democratization is so important. And then to your point about how do you unlock current finance and create new finance for these need-based solutions. So we are going to continue this conversation. I know that you have to leave, so thank you so much for joining. I know you're on travel right now, and we will continue the conversation and get ready for the work that it's going to take to continue this conversation. We know Climate Week's coming up. There's other regional convenings. We'll be at COP before we know it, and we know that at the end of the day, it's about good conversations that lead to real demonstrations of impact. So thank you, Masamba, and go on your way, and we'll keep the conversation going here and report back. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm very excited for you all to kind of respond to what Masamba put forth, but also excited to hear your insights from your vantage point. So what I want to do is a few rounds of questions. I would say the first is a little bit of sense making. The next round is about solution making. And then we're going to kind of put ourselves on the spot about what we're going to do about it going forth. So we have a lot to get done in the remaining time. So what I'd love to do right now is just starting with Pouria, please tell us what is your experience in working with cities? What are the gaps right now? And what is the promise that you see for digital finance?
Thanks so much, Catherine. I think you nailed it in terms of how you asked the question, what are the gaps and challenges that cities are facing today? So in my vantage point, before a city can even begin on this journey of integrating technology, I think it must first correctly identify local needs and capabilities. And as a city network, we see assisting cities with identification of human needs as a concrete opportunity in our work. So our approach to applying technology in the context of digital finance in cities is really hinging on a clear process and radical collaboration to achieve that process. And when I say the word process, I always remember the other esteemed colleague Catherine on the call that she's also very process driven. And the process starts from our perspective from identifying the local needs, ensuring that we find the root causes instead of symptoms of these, and then making sure that we leverage digital finance to address those root causes. So it's about finding the right challenges and needs, and then also identifying the challenges that are impeding flow of finance to where it needs to go, basically in line with the title that Ikli set for this session. So if this part of identification or co-identification of the challenges and gaps is done correctly and accurately, then the process of choosing the right technology and linking governments with leading edge solution, building capacities, implementing monitoring, and improving interventions have a higher chance of success and impact in the long run. And that is exactly why within the UGIH space, you're always advocating for proper impact assessment and identifying needs assessment, but also the feasibility and readability of digital finance solutions in different contexts. So it's not like a top-down approach, but rather co-identification and co-creation of the solutions with cities. Unfortunately, current approaches to the climate crisis and sustainable development are often static, addressing only the superficial level and operating within the existing systems, including financial systems, that are tackling, the root of problem and developing new systems and approaches. So static solutions are insufficient because wicked problems like climate change are inherently systemic and dynamic, making transformative change, including in the context of finance for climate, very critical. So I agree with Basama's point regarding the integrative aspects of applying digital finance. We cannot have a purely techno-centric approach and instead need to combine technology with policy and essential social and environmental aspects. So digital finance solutions absolutely have the potential to deliver transformative impacts and radical innovation if it's done through the right process. However, they need to be applied in an effective and inclusive manner that serves human needs in the first place and meet cities where they are and help them where they aspire to be in terms of their capacity to leverage technological solutions. So I put a pause here, but I'm looking forward to hearing from other speakers, their perspectives on this essential aspect of digital finance. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Poria. That's a great context setting. And now I would love to bring Bobby into this conversation. And Bobby, what are you thinking about? What's your experience been in this space as you've been working to bridge the finance and business, development of new business models to unlock climate and sustainability, given your experience? And obviously you've been a change maker and also a funder. So love your perspective on both digital finance, but traditional finance. We'll have a chance to chat more about how we're going to get them all together in the next round, but please just share with us your thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Catherine. And yes, just to provide some context, I advise our CIO, our Chief Investment Officer at SK Hart Management, which is a multi-billion-dollar single-family office based out of Salt Lake City. And the way our family made our money was with a company that focused on environmental waste remediation called EnviroCare. And what was critical to that company's success was its ability to navigate the permitting and the regulatory process in working with municipalities and state governments around the country. And so as a result, as we look to focus on climate solution investing, through funds predominantly as an institutional scale investor, we also look at opportunities to deploy some of the direct investments and the co-investments in municipalities in which around the country. And so it's very clear that there's opportunities to better navigate the municipal context and improve the ability of decision makers to engage with the various companies that we're either invested in or advising. And also like to provide an additional perspective from my time, period of time that I worked at the IFC, and part of my role there was on product investment product design, and understanding that the needs of institutional capital is very much connected back to the ability to do proper measurement, reporting, and verification, and as we know, impact linked instruments are critical to help track the use of proceeds and then support this institutional allocation process. As we see, there has been examples around the world where entities who are able to attract carbon offset purchases, offtake agreements up front, have been able to attract institutional capital. And so I think we need to be using more and more of these examples to help crowd in the right amount of capital that's needed.
Thanks, Bobby. Really appreciate that. And really interested to talk more about MRV and to think about what it takes to put that and make that a reality across global context. So Catherine, can you jump in now? We're calling you Katie now because we're both Catherines. It's very confusing. But Katie, could you share with us your work at the Green Digital Finance Alliance? And I know you're working, this is like what you do 24/7. So please, share your work. And also if you could provide a few examples of the way you're seeing these solutions play out or become, start to be deployed, it would be great.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. And I'll try to do it in a way that sort of reflects what's already been so eloquently said by Masamba and Bobby. And I'll start also by just saying that, the Green Digital Finance Alliance is a Swiss-based NGO, and we co-lead multi-stakeholder collaborations to build out concrete demonstrators, as well as co-create open tools and platforms, demonstrating it can be done to unlock climate finance directly with stakeholders and with institutions. And these could be incumbents and traditional finance mechanisms, as well as new mechanisms and new actors alike. And we navigate, but also advise on the policy and regulatory side. We actually started as sort of the Sherpa knowledge partner of the UN Secretary General's task force on digital financing of the SDGs. But over the past year in particular, we've really dug into concrete demonstrators, leveraging our past tools and process. And I think process has to be a big part of this innovation. Masamba talked about moonshots. And moonshots still have to be rooted on Earth. They have to include key stakeholders and financed in a contextual way. And I think that's what we try to do as best as possible. Can go into some concrete examples. But I also wanted to say that we also have to think about what we need by need-based, who's defining those needs, where are they defining them, who's paying, who's benefiting, both indirectly and directly, and what resources and barriers do they face. So that's really the first step in identifying those needs. And then what we mean by finance, because we do have investors, we have alternatives or for individuals through incumbent financial institutions, as well as what we mean by cities. And so we don't set boundaries around any of those definitions. We dig into the problem identification. We're geographically diverse, but it's really about, and we have pilots and demonstrators in the EU on retrofitting of building, because that's a really big source of GHGs and energy consumption in in Europe. And then we also are working on energy community in Canada, sort of building out the new energy infrastructure, as well as internationally. So we're trying to get away from this notion of global south and global north, but look for the intersections of of those alternative ways or unlocking the finance, because a low-income community in the EU has similar elements to an Indigenous community in Canada, and also similarly to a community we're working with in Africa. And by focusing on that lab approach, the demonstrators, we can dig right into the co-creation. And I can give you an example from Europe where we're looking at a specific stage of housing life cycle, the shelter question in low-income communities. And we have 5 demonstrators under an EU project. And by recognizing that that we bring them through this identification of what will help serve their housing institution best, is it, and here, of course, in Europe, we have renters, but we also have low-income community institutions and buildings, as well as individuals. So we have to think about the financing from those perspectives. So what we have as an example is helping them, once we've helped them identify their needs, which in this case is retrofit, and we walk them through open source platform of business models and technologies that are readily available. And then we bring in the banks with the pilot to understand what are the specific barriers to unlocking digital green mortgages and loans. And by doing so, we actually can reach those solutions. And sometimes it's just access to data. Sometimes it's about new finance mechanisms that need to be in place, pooled community resources, etc. So it's processes innovative and the results are diverse, but that is how we're doing the unlocking. And at the same time, we're looking at higher level or newer types of innovations, such as the carbon linked and carbon forward digital green bonds, which builds on what Masamba said and what was said in the last session with the BIS. I'll stop there because I'll end up speaking about every pilot and demonstrator.
No, that's fantastic. Love to hear it. It's really important to concretize this. And in fact, I'd love to just, Poria, you talked about this kind of the needs assessment and really understanding where cities are at. When you think about finance and the finance gap, sometimes we talk about the finance gap and we're really talking about business models and digital finance as a way to unlock and create new business models. Could you just give us a couple examples that you're seeing right now of kind of what's the appetite? Like sometimes we talk about these things and are they pie in the sky? Are people talking about it? Do they get it? Like where are we with that right now?
Thanks a lot, Catherine. I kind of feel like that's a really powerful question, and probably takes all of us to share a little bit of reflection and answer to this question. But I kind of feel like I would like to highlight one thing that is worth mentioning, and is the role of theory that is very crucial when we are approaching this, because I often refer to this quote from this civil rights activist Michael Zinzon on this topic, when he gives this analogy of a town where every day residents find some babies floating down a river, and then the town perfects its strategy for saving the babies from the river, and are world leaders on this front. However, without the broader perspective that theory provides, no one thinks to spend resources finding out who's putting the babies in the river in the first place. So I kind of feel like this is one of the things that we need to take into consideration in the first place. And then I would like to look into that question a little bit more strategic, in the sense that it is really easy to become overwhelmed and paralyzed into inaction because we are trying to pursue perfection and finding the exact challenge and the successful examples. And sometimes we call it best practices, which I'm so against them, because a practice that is good for one context may not necessarily be great for the other context. And at the same time, some of those practices and examples might have high replication potential to inform next practices in other regions. So the reality is that in facing today's big problems, we do not have time for perfection, and in its place, we need to kind of collaborate to develop the capacity to take a long-term and systemic perspective. Now, in this context, we need to basically ask what is the systemic perspective that we would like to bring to the table with cities, with the cities that are dealing with pressing challenges, cities that their leadership is finding hard to match past performances with the conventional tools, and the need for finance is becoming more and more problematic. We already know that to be able to stay on 1.5 degrees trajectory, we need to spend $4.3 trillion a year on climate financing. But last year, we could only add up to 625 billions. And then the funny thing is, like, only 10% of this whole funding is going down to cities, and this is in its first place is a big problem. And second, we need to design our solutions to be flexible and dynamic with built-in feedback loops, so that they can respond to new challenges or opportunities in the form of technological breakthroughs. So I agree with the point that Bobby raised on sharing the insight related to basically this effectiveness of environmental standards that's really dependent on their implementation. So on this front, we need to really ensure that there are stronger links between the private and public sector in terms of what is required. And that's one of the challenges. And at the same time, one of the positive things we see that where in cities this takes place, objectives are, more achievable. And how it can be achieved and transparently reported through technological sort of services such as digital MRV is of course in question. And I think that this is a great example of how business models and sustainability goals do not need to be mutually exclusive. And there are several barriers to integrating digital finance solutions within the context of cities. One of such challenges is the mismatch between the rapidly emerging technologies and the policies and regulations that address them. Much of the policies and what they are responding to in this area are largely reactive and not proactive. It's essential that to design policies and ensure like policymakers engage with cutting-edge technologies and how they can be applied for the public good, so that this gap can be addressed. And another thing is that not everyone has access to the necessary technology to use digital finance solutions within the cities. When we are talking about the solutions that should be scaled up globally, we need to really look into these challenges. Specifically, a lack of data is a critical challenge, specifically in Global South. And also, I remember I was talking to the head of Metro Rwanda, that he was referring to this fact that many of these databases are designed based on Global North norm, which means that a lot of that are from Global South, such as indigenous data, are not really represented properly within these databases. So we need to ensure that Global South actors are part of the co-developing of the integration of this digital finance into sustainable development and climate issues, and lead the conversation on their needs in this space. And finally, there are gaps within the research that need to address. We need concrete research to generate actionable knowledge on the impact of digital finance solutions on sustainability and climate. Also, linking theory and practice and bringing that grand theory to ground practice, I think more strongly and is needed, and ensuring that the research institutions are working on local challenges and that governments have access to this leading edge information. So as digital technologies continue to transform the way we live and work in cities and our cities and the traditional funders, digital finance solution providers and ecosystem enablers need to adapt to stay relevant. And we need to work together to enable this basically adaptation and address these challenges that I have raised. Put a pause here, and thanks so much for the question. Looking forward to hearing from other panelists. Thank you.
Thanks, Pouria. You're going just like we're going right into the core of the discussion. Really is, okay, then what are the blockers? Like, what needs to happen to, both, as you said, like get cities the foundational data they need to play in this space, because digital finance requires a level of data and technology adaptation and deployment. And so that's you've identified that as a piece. You've also raised the enabling environment as another challenge. I'd love to just surface a set of challenges as we move from the theory and the promise of digital finance to like what's it going to take to see it actually making a difference in cities globally, and especially those cities that are, most struggling to get the kind of finance that they need to deploy these need-based solutions. So maybe I'd like to just go around the horn and have Bobby and Catherine just kind of what are the key challenges that we need to unlock, and then let's workshop those together here in this next round. Bobby?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I would say that especially in the context of the Global South, that there's the regulatory and perceived risks associated with those investments. So I think, as Masamba alluded to earlier, and as Poria was echoing, this need for innovative policy, and also policy sort of linked instruments that could help investors navigate those policy frameworks, and frankly the use of and collaboration with multilateral agencies and even ratings agencies. So ultimately, I think when you drill down into that discussion, it becomes a question of specific business models, specific cash flows, and then rolling those up into a product at the product level, which make allocation feasible for investors. So I would say that really it's on one hand a regulatory and policy challenge as one of the sort of blockers / opportunities, and on the other hand, really understanding the underlying business models and resulting cash flows, and how to support that process to the point where deals become indeed bankable, as the term is.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bobby. And thanks for getting us also reframing. I think you're right. Like, we need to talk about the challenges, but we need to have this conversation in the context of what is it going to do? What's it going to take? What do we all have to do differently to create this opportunity? Because the need is great. And, I am seeing all around the world examples of really like communities with needs and leadership from the ground up, coming up with amazing solutions and connecting and showcasing impact. And I think, Poria, we need to bring them to the table so that they are in charge of their own destiny and this co-creation process. I also see digital finance. We have lots of proofs of concept out there. We haven't quite gotten to like real deployment and scale, but it's very close. Like, I feel like we're in the next 2 to 3 years, if we do our work right, I think we're going to really start to show and not just tell that this work makes a difference. So in that spirit of reformulating and redirecting, Catherine, can you share a little bit about what you're thinking when it comes to what we have to do to put in place, like who has to do what differently? Poria, are you getting questions in the chat? Do we need to start bringing those in? Are we fine? Okay, great. Catherine, so you're seeing all of this and you do it every day. So share with us kind of where we need to go right now, and I'd like people to talk about like what happens first, in terms of this work.
Yeah, I think from a systems perspective, it really depends upon your starting point and identifying where you are, who are you working with. And I think what's been said is really very much on point. From our perspective, what GDFA used to do and still does in terms of fintech is look at a readiness assessment, but this was very much from a Western perspective. So instead, what I want to see happening is focus on, as was already mentioned, current localized, contextualized challenges, current capacities, types of tools and information available that can then be leveraged to unlock financing. And that also means capturing in a way that can be shared, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Africa, or whether you're in Northern British Columbia, some of those tools and capacities. So that's why we also build out or pilot, demonstrate that it can be done. through our open crowdsourced tools and platforms that we do want to scale up or interconnect to others. So I saw EBDR just had a session with them where they showed their entire catalog of tech tools that have already been vetted with the business models, et cetera, and very contextualized to developing communities. And I know in our group, we've been talking a lot about something similar. So I think we already have lessons to be learned from other initiatives that we can draw upon. So let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just attach it to a spoke or to a another wheel and actually make everything move faster. But what I really want to see, is again, understanding the terminology, those business models, the funding sources, the type of data or information, and how it's actually interconnected, because we do have those mechanisms from low tech to high tech. So embedding and contextualize with already established microfinance capacities and tools and MRV, to in Europe, where, as was already mentioned, the regulatory frameworks were problematic. So in some of our pilots, we see that, okay, we have to pivot because we assume that data will be available from one source, but GDPR won't allow certain elements. So we had to pivot, but it still can be done. And we were able to then go to general energy bill summaries to unlock enough information to unlock the digital green loans and mortgages. So we demonstrated it's possible. And I think that's part of it, is being agile enough to understand that you have to be very contextualized, but then sharing the contextualized makes the assumption that you can't scale, but it can be scaled, but just not in that sort of streamlined way. It really is about sharing the processes and the pivot points that we can actually leverage here. So I think I'll stop there because I've probably gone way off topic, but I really like the way this conversation is going.
Thanks, Catherine. Any responses from Puriya or Bobby to what Catherine said? Puriya, what are you thinking when you hear that? Like, what do we need to do to work with cities in a meaningful way? And when you talked about data and what kind of infrastructure investments need to get made, like, do we know what a context specific, culturally competent data strategy looks like?
Thanks a lot, Catherine. I can quickly comment to that. I guess, like, you all know, like, my personal stance that, like, I believe, yes, there are a lot of already sort of solid work in different regions, yet we lack a proper global assessment, knowing that this is a very fast and ever-evolving space, and therefore I still think there is a need for proper assessment, like, in the context. So that's one thing. On the other hand, I think the reality is, as you mentioned, there are already a lot of successful sort of approaches, methods, and solutions. And to the point that Catherine mentioned, it's like, it is not just we want to develop new solutions, but also a lot of tested solutions that we need to scale up. And I think that's a low-hanging fruit when it comes to the world of digital finance, that you can quickly ensure there are enough financial resources to be able to apply and scale up those solutions in the first place. But as we move forward and as technologies are being developed and as our communities are being transformed, we obviously cannot lean on the existing solutions merely, and we need to develop new solutions. And these new solutions, from my perspective, need to be type of transformative solutions in the sense that they also challenge the existing sort of mechanisms for financing and business models. And obviously that's not something that we can make it overnight, but the good news is, like, it is happening in different spaces. And maybe it's a little bit unrelated side note, but I think pandemic was a very powerful example for all of us to learn. Also, in the world of finance, we saw that, like, what happened to the crypto world market, not that supporting or promoting, not at all, but like what we observed, that there was an influx, and like everything was about cryptos, because back then there was a shock in the system, and capitals, public, private, even some of these big organizations, hedge funds, corporates, like, you know, that Tesla zone that was basically developed for, or that area of like 42K for Bitcoin, for example, because Tesla like bought in that race, and everyone was calling in their analysis, oh, that's a Tesla zone thing. So I just wanted to take this example and showcase that when there is a shock to the system, it's also an opportunity to transform the existing things. And the reality is, like, we know that now there is a shock in the system. It's not as sudden onset as a pandemic was, but it's becoming more and more sort of clear for all of us and the actors, and we hopefully can leverage and transform the landscape. I pass the floor to Bobby to hear his thoughts on that front. Thank you.
Yes, no, and I noticed the question in the chat that Catherine Foster posted around trying to accurately understand the needs of cities, and I think, you know, an interesting perspective for that question is really, you know, looking at it from the perspectives of the solutions, the companies themselves, and how are they pulling from their market assessments, and can those market assessments be more robust in partnership with the city? Ultimately using that end user data to help inform how the solutions will be deployed. So I think there's really an opportunity there for better coordination between the individual companies and their solutions, and the cities, and so the opportunity then presents itself for a facilitated process by which companies who are looking at deployment can be shepherded through an engagement process with cities, and really with this eye towards understanding what are the local needs, what are the local applications of their solutions, and as Puriya alluded to earlier, understanding that in each city, in each context, there's a slightly different variation, slightly different application for each solution.
Thanks, Bobby. And you're getting us into, you know, as we're getting close to the end of our hour, let's talk specifically about the UGH Digital Finance Working Group. That's our container, our collective container for moving this issue forward. And I hear us, you know, issuing a challenge to ourselves and to our partners to come together and really hothouse the sort of the range of essential elements to an ecosystem that can make breakthroughs for cities. That we have to actually demonstrate that it's worth their like limited time and effort to engage with digital finance, that it can unlock traditional finance, it can bring new finance, it can create new types of solutions. So I'm hearing from you, Bobby, like, let's bring in the traditional funders to the table. Let's bring in those solution providers. I hear Puriya, we're talking about, obviously cities have to be front and center, and their policy context needs to be understood and also part of the solution. And I'm wondering if we could do a round, a sort of reflections on what would the Digital Finance Working Group want to bring forward. I know personally for me, I want to see those entities coming together. That is the UGH theory of change around innovation, which is we have to bring everybody to the table, and everybody has to start doing something differently. And understanding how they fit in, and we've got to take actual city challenges and show and demonstrate impact. And I know that that's what we're planning to do together, but I'd love to hear you all just kind of cast forward. What do you want this working group to have done in service of the UGH and its global goal to support greater impact in cities across the world when it comes to need-based finance and climate solutions? So, Catherine, what are we going to have done in when we come back next year as a working group at UGH? And what do we have to do to get there? And what do we need from people?
So many questions. I also wanted to combine the questions from the Q&A because I think they're actually quite interrelated and sort of speak to each other in terms of what our answer should be or what our process should be. You know, and I think what we're talking about in cities is really communities of stakeholders, and there's different layers and different approaches of interfacing with cities. And I think ICLEI has a lot of those tools and mechanisms and processes in place. From our perspective, we've got self-identified communities of stakeholders within our different projects. And that could be from the solution provider saying, hey, we know we have clients out there, they just can't access the financing, or we have banks saying, we have financing, but we're not getting the data and the digital impact that we need in order to unlock it. And then we have the needs, the people in need saying, our apartments are really hot, we need to retrofit our building because otherwise we have to turn on fans or air conditioning and we can't afford it. So let's start from the network effective and the entry point. And what the UGIH is doing, I think, is bringing these disparate and different communities of stakeholders from different areas of the world as well through that process. We have a feedback loop through our approach through our, that we did a questionnaire over the last 2 years to do that outreach and how we identify needs rather than being prescriptive. And then we actually have, the information from innovation calls, such as the ones we're doing and from demonstrators. And so that type of outreach is really important to understand how we will build out the systemic solutions that we need. And it really is about combining these capacities in a very contextual way.
Thanks, Catherine. Poria, can you weigh in? And also, we have an opportunity to answer one of the questions in the chat, which was, with digital finance, there's a lot of attention on the private sector to innovate and government to create the enabling environment. Do you think that cities are on this trajectory? And is there a gap? So if you could also answer that question along the way, it'd be great.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Catherine, for the question. I think that's really hard to answer that. And just being a researcher, I would like to always ground my statements in sort of established facts. And I kind of felt like you can't really say for a fact, but based on my observation, I kind of felt like, it might be partly the case, but certainly the way we see local government's engagement within this whole context is in vertical governance, and of course it's multi-level action. And what do we mean by that? It's like when we are talking about cities, we are not talking about a united entity. We are talking about a jurisdiction in which we have a local government that has convening power and that has this power to devise legislations and policy, but within their own limitations. And obviously you need higher levels of governance to support, and then higher levels of, this international sort of agreements to further support. So there's a need for connection in that space. And then also, one other thing that at ICLEI we are promoting is the shift of the role of local governments from service provider to community enabler. And it's particularly important when it comes to digital finance and this whole financing thing, because we believe local governments should provide this enabling environment. And it's not only local governments, but of course national governments as well, for the other actors to take bold actions. And that's again the incubators, startups, and private sector comes into play. And what we are really advocating for that is I think we're done with framing private sector as part of the problem, and we would like to work around the narrative how they can be part of the solution. And that's where again different sort of approaches to collaboration between public and private sector in tackling climate change comes into play. Just one thing that Catherine mentioned regarding the resources that ICLEI has produced is one of which is this ICLEI Finance Tree that is a decision-making tool that guides local and regional governments through a series of questions to help them consider different financing tools for climate-related projects. And that tool is designed to help local governments to identify the most appropriate financing options based on their specific needs and circumstances, but also, sort of connecting the dots, how best the collaboration with private sector can come into play. And thanks so much. I see one of the colleagues put the link to that to the chat. But what I want to say that there are a ton of tools out there also by CCFLA, this coalition with cities for finance that ICLEI is also part of it. But we do need to really take that further, because again, this is an evolving space and we need all the actors to establish a continuous dialogue. So we don't see it as a blueprint solution. For us, tackling this challenge is a constant dance between national governments, local governments, private sector, and I put a pause here.
Thanks, Poria. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, and I want to let Bobby close us out as just an insightful person and also the co-chair of this digital finance working group. But also, I just want to recognize that we're excited that GDFA and ICLEI are coming into this and bringing their tremendous experience and their sort of their drive and passion, and obviously we're looking forward to that partnership. And Bobby, can you close us out and just share your thoughts about what we should be thinking about as we're doing this work going forward?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Catherine. And to answer your question really around what do we hope the working group would achieve, in a year's time, let's say, I think it's clear for us that in addition to being able to really test an innovative digital finance solution, we would hope to see that there are pilots that have been articulated and implemented to a certain extent that can truly surface and successfully address the gaps and the opportunities across funding, solutions, and policy. Really surfacing and addressing these gaps through the demonstration of the pilots. I think the other thing that we'd really like to see is that we're able to successfully leverage this inclusive stakeholder consultation and connectivity process that we recognize that UGIH is so uniquely positioned to do. And finally, I think we would love to see the ability to leverage a truly novel data collection and data attribution process. And so collectively, I think, if we could achieve these things in the next year, our working group will have done its duty. So thank you,
That's
Catherine.
fantastic, Bobby. I love that is a great agenda for us. And I'm seeing, Poria, we've got a little bit more time to converse. So I'd love to hear people, Catherine and Poria, what are you thinking about what Bobby's saying, and what would you bring to that? So I think that putting ourselves to the test and saying we need to actually prove up some of these digital finance solutions. We need to bring people together effectively to do that. And we need to, really tackle data and MRV as part of that. These are some of the things that Bobby has raised.
My part in terms of the pilots and the demonstrators, by already doing them with sort of the common clustering over certain elements, is one way that we're providing that type of synergy to happen. So for example, in the EU, I think by looking at 5 different demonstrators across 4 different climatic zones and different problems, it's quite diverse, but at the same time, we have an umbrella structure and process and capturing of information, policy enablers, financial enablers, and digital and data enablers. And that's a similar approach that we're going to be doing in Canada. And if we can take in lessons learned from that process and bring it into the UGIH, where we have sort of that global nodes and networking, with those sort of umbrella mechanisms to capture that information in those processes and layer up on what's already existing. To me, that's a very effective way of doing it. And because you're going from that, at the UGIH, we're very much at that global stakeholder level, but this goes right down to homeowners and community associations and local banks. So we're getting real, localized, contextualized information, or from the communities in Africa that are using circular techniques for buildings and what type of investment mechanisms. So we're getting huge diversity, but under sort of a common umbrella mechanism.
Thanks, Catherine. Poria?
I think, I mean, first and foremost, also from my side, a thank to all the speakers and yourself, Catherine. I would like to highlight that, like, speaking from ICLEI, like, we are one of the hosts of this forum, and also we are one of the partners of the UGH Digital Finance Group, which means that, like, we ourselves have really been benefiting from the insights from different partners, and also the dialogue that we've had today. And we are excited to build upon these outcomes and bring them into our work. Obviously, speaking on of the UGH Digital Finance Working Group and the objectives as like to serving, I would say at the end of the day, the cities and communities. And I kind of feel like we are, specifically ICLEI, speaking for ICLEI, we are passionate about supporting cities and communities through all these digital innovations and of course this new business models, and of course as I highlighted and to the Masamba's point at the beginning, we would like to understand how we can sort of find a set of solutions or cluster of solutions under this whole digital finance conversation that could address human needs in the first place. And not only focusing solely on reducing GHGs, for example. So that's one thing. And I kind of felt like, to promote digital finance and needs-based climate solutions in cities, at future COPs, cities and NGOs can advocate for several key necessary changes. The first one, broadly speaking, is more support and attention to local climate action. Providing communities with the resources they need allows the people themselves to plan and implement climate solutions that align with their needs. And I really like this quote from UN Secretary General that in our new business models, we need to put citizens on driving seats, because the choices surrounding their everyday expenditures could impact the generations to come. So to promote this this type of mindset in international arena, one can advocate for increased investments and donations for climate projects, especially those targeting the local level and developing countries. And then there are already several digital finance tools, as I mentioned, that allow entities and individuals to sort of invest directly in communities. So probably we need to also shift our mindset to only existing pipelines of funding to new sort of streams of funding climate action to address that huge gap. That's something that we really need to look into. And I was really inspired by that report of People's Money that was published a few years ago by the UN Digital Finance Task Force. So then I kind of feel like, this open access, this whole notion of open access, user-friendly and low-maintenance technologies should also be prioritized to ensure all countries can benefit from them. The global problems like climate change, solutions, including digital solutions, should be shared among countries. And therefore, it is extremely essential when we are setting the scene from like somewhere like UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub. We really need to take this into consideration in the first step. And from ICLEI, we are always open to partnerships and collaborations with other key actors and partners to serve the cities. And cities obviously are always like playing their part as much as possible in this arena. But we know that cities are at the front line of combating climate change. So designing solutions that could capacitate local governments should be really taking the center stage in the work of UGIH. And we are there to ensure that these solutions are co-created with partners such as GDFA and other partners that cities feel the ownership, and those are implementable and scalable across the globe. Fazi here, being mindful of time, and thank you so much for this very fruitful conversation.
Thank you so much, Pouria. And I think it's a great, as you were speaking, somebody in the chat, asked the question that is the challenge for us, which is like, show, don't tell. Is digital finance really a realistic component of a change strategy in local communities? And I would just say this, that we see that the digital world is everywhere, and the idea that everybody isn't being changed by it. Our job is to ensure that that digital new world that we're in actually inures to the benefit of communities globally and drives climate solutions. And so I think that this is an element of investment, but also just focus and attention. And I do think that globally we are seeing some important reckoning going on in countries that are going to have to take responsibility for their carbon footprint. We're going to see carbon markets created. We're obviously all recognizing that that adaptation has to be front and center as well. And so I do see an opportunity if those with passion and the information and expertise come together. So that's my commitment is to show, not tell, and because the opportunity is there. So I also just wanted, anybody else on the panel want to say anything else before we close out? It's been a great conversation, and obviously we get to oftentimes on panels just say, oh, we're going to keep working on this. Like, we really are. So hands raised if you want to say one last thing. Catherine.
Just about the definition of digital finance, because I think there can be an assumption that it is a very specific route or pathway. And what we're talking about is the capacity of data, of information to unlock business models, to unlock financing. And it can take different paths, different layers, different routes, and involve different types of institutions, new and incumbent. So I think I just want to close there to say, it is a more encompassing definition than perhaps some people are used to.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. Really important clarification. Anybody else have anything? Poria, do you? Your daring cities, thank you for letting us be part of the conversation. I think it was exchange. We're going to be going, now we're going to disseminate, and then we're going to advocate. So tell us what to do next, and we're excited to be a partner with you.
I think I would like to actually thank all the panelists on behalf of ICLEI and the Daring Cities team for taking your time and joining to this conversation. I think Katie is an old friend of ICLEI, but of course, like, we appreciate you, Catherine and Bobby, taking the time so early in the morning, joining the prep and now in the session. We really value that, and this shows your dedication and commitment. And we look forward to nothing but closely collaborating with each and every one of you, both at the individual level and institutional level within the UGIH Digital Finance Working Group, to carry the work forward and making sure that we create meaningful impact and deliver meaningful services in the ground to cities, so that hopefully next year when we come here, we've taken a big step collectively. I just want to also take a quick moment and appreciate our wonderful Daring Cities events team working around the clock and making these conversations possible. A big thank to our colleague Johanna and who's our champ, and the wonderful team that Joe leads, Julia, Catalina, and the others. Also, I would like to thank all our audience and also those who listen to this later, to the recording of this session. Would like to flag that please join us on September 1st at 6 p.m. Actually 4 p.m. Central European Summer Time for the next virtual forum event, implementing just and equitable energy transition that is addressing leadership and lessons from Argentina's local governments. This event will be taking place fully in Spanish, and if you can find more information, if you can obviously find more information in the chat with the registration link. We would also like to warmly invite you to join us on September 6th, a panel that I'm going to be moderating, another exciting one that is around systemic management innovation. And therefore, I kind of feel like, this showcases that ICLEI loves these connections on innovation in different fronts. But thanks again, and back to yourself, Catherine, for any last word you or other panelists may have. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And I think we all have work to do, and appreciate the questions in the chat. and the collaboration that we'll all need to engage in amongst ourselves, but with others in your community. So, and I want to thank Masamba Chioya for joining, and obviously for his vision and leadership in creating the UGIH and giving us a way to come together to make a difference. Thanks, Bobby, obviously, is co-chair of this group, and obviously Catherine too. Take care.